What happens when someone stands up during a live taping and says 7 words that bring everything to a complete stop? I'm not who you think I am. Dr. Phil raised his hand toward the cameras, his voice cutting through the studio with total clarity. Stop the tape right now. The woman in the guest chair trembled, mascara streaking down her cheeks, holding something tightly in her hand that no one had noticed until that moment. What she was about to share would impact not only her own life, but everyone watching. 30 minutes earlier, the taping had begun like any standard episode. The audience settled in, cameras rolled, and Dr. Phil walked onto the stage with his usual confident stride. The topic seemed simple enough. My daughter is out of control, and I don't know what to do. Sarah Mitchell, a well-dressed woman in her mid-40s, sat composed in the guest seat. Next to her was her 16-year-old daughter, Emma, arms crossed, mascara already smudged from crying backstage. Sarah, Dr. Phil began, leaning forward in the familiar way that made guests feel both understood and examined. You wrote to us saying Emma has become unrecognizable. Tell me what's going on. Sarah took a measured breath, her hands neatly folded. Dr. Phil, she's sneaking out at night. Failing school. I found drugs in her room. She won't listen to me anymore. Emma rolled her eyes and slouched deeper in her seat. The audience murmured quietly. Dr. Phil turned toward Emma. What do you say to that? She's lying, Emma replied flatly. She's been lying about everything for years. What no one in the room realized was that Emma was telling the complete truth. Dr. Phil shifted his approach, a familiar strategy developed over decades. Sarah, walk me through a normal day. When did things begin to fall apart? Sarah described their routines, Emma's behavior changes, and the tension within the home. She spoke clearly, hitting every emotional point. She came across as credible, a mother at the end of her patience. But as she talked, something subtle changed. Dr. Phil's eyes narrowed slightly, a sign his producers knew well. He'd noticed something. Stop right there, Dr. Phil said, not harsh, but firmly. You just said Emma comes home at 2 a.m., but earlier you told our producers she has a 9 p.m. curfew and that you lock her door from the outside. The audience leaned forward together. Sarah's composed expression faltered for a moment. I meant I used to lock it before. Before what? Dr. Phil asked. Before she started climbing out the window. Dr. Phil allowed the silence to sit. He didn't rush it. He simply watched her with the steady gaze that had caused countless guests to open up over the years. The room fell completely quiet. Something was beginning to come undone. Emma suddenly straightened, her defensive attitude fading. Dr. Phil, can I say something? Hold on, Emma. Dr. Phil answered calmly, though his focus never shifted from Sarah. Sarah, I need you to be completely honest with me right now. Is there something you're not sharing? Sarah's carefully folded hands began to shake. Her eyes darted toward the cameras, the audience, and even the exit signs. She began, then paused. I don't know what you mean. Dr. Phil leaned back, and anyone familiar with his show knew this was the moment he changed course entirely. His tone dropped, more serious. Sarah, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I can tell when someone is acting out a role instead of speaking their truth. Right now, you're performing. Her composure weakened. Her hands moved to her lap, fiddling with something, a tiny folded piece of paper that was almost hidden. Then, off camera, Dr. Phil made a decision no producer expected. He stood, walked over to Sarah, and knelt beside her so they were eye level. The cameras hurried to adjust. The audience held its breath. Sarah, he said quietly, his voice so soft the microphones barely caught it. Whatever you're holding on to, whatever you're hiding, it's consuming you. I can see it. Emma can see it. Everyone here can sense it. You came on this show with a purpose. So let's be honest right now. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, not the forced emotion from earlier. Her hands trembled as she opened the small piece of paper. Dr. Phil, she whispered, her voice breaking. I need to tell you something. But if I say it, everything changes. Then let it change, Dr. Phil replied, soft but firm. Because whatever you're trying to protect isn't helping anyone. Look at your daughter. Sarah turned to Emma, who was now openly crying. Not the defensive tears from before, but the kind that come from waiting far too long for the truth. I'm not who you think I am, Sarah said, and the words hung in the air like an alarm waiting to go off. Dr. Phil froze mid-sentence. The studio fell into absolute silence. He stood slowly, walked back toward his chair, and did something he had only done a few times across thousands of episodes. He looked directly at the control room. Stop the tape. The cameras didn't halt at once. The producers stared, unsure what to do. The audience glanced around anxiously. Emma looked at her mother with a mix of shock and relief. I said, stop the tape, Dr. Phil repeated, this time with a sharper tone. Cut the cameras. Everyone backstage. Clear the room. For about 30 seconds, everything was chaotic. Producers rushed around. Camera operators stepped away. Audience members whispered to one another. Dr. Phil remained at center stage, one hand raised, waiting until every camera was shut down and every microphone muted. Only when the last red light faded did he turn back to Sarah. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still to come. With the cameras off and only the house lights on, Dr. Phil brought his chair directly in front of Sarah's. No desk between them. No showmanship, just two people and one frightened teenager. Now, Dr. Phil said gently, tell me who you really are. Sarah's hands shook as she fully opened the paper. It was a birth certificate, just not Emma's. Someone else's. My name isn't Sarah Mitchell, she said, barely audible. It's Sarah Brennan. I changed it 17 years ago. Dr. Phil took the document and examined it closely. Why, he asked. Because I was running. Emma made a sound, half gasp, half sob. Mom, I was 18 years old, Sarah continued, the words now pouring out like water breaking through a dam. I became pregnant. The father was dangerous and abusive. I knew that if I stayed, and if he learned about the baby, we would never be safe. Dr. Phil's expression stayed neutral, but his posture shifted, becoming more cautious. So, you left, he said. I left everything, I replied. My family, my name, my entire life. I moved 3 states away, changed my identity, and gave birth to Emma alone in a motel room because I was too afraid to go to a hospital where they would ask for identification. The audience, still there but now witnessing something far more personal than expected, fell completely silent. And Emma, Dr. Phil asked carefully, when did she learn the truth? 6 months ago, Emma said, her voice steadier than expected. I found the birth certificate hidden in her closet. A different name, a different past. But what happened next was something no one in the studio or watching later could have predicted. Sarah turned to Emma, tears running down her face. I never wanted you to find out that way. I planned to tell you when you turned 18. I had a letter prepared, everything. You were going to tell me that my whole life was a lie? Emma's voice shook. Your life isn't a lie, Sarah said softly. Your life is the only thing I've ever done honestly. Dr. Phil allowed the moment to settle before speaking. Sarah, is Emma's biological father still a danger? Sarah shook her head. I don't know. I haven't looked back in 17 years. I don't know if he's searching for me or if he even remembers me. But I've spent almost 2 decades watching every corner, waiting for him to appear. And that fear, Dr. Phil said slowly, is what Emma has been living with, too. I thought I was protecting her, Sarah whispered. But I was only teaching her to be scared. Dr. Phil stood, walked a few steps, then made a clear decision. He went to the front of the stage and called out, Robin, I need you out here. Robin McGraw, his wife and frequent show partner, stepped out. She had clearly been listening, her eyes already red. Sarah, Dr. Phil said, what you did 17 years ago, running, protecting your child, starting over, took immense courage. But living in fear now, passing that fear to Emma, that's what we need to address. He turned to a producer waiting by the side of the stage. Get Dr. Sophie on the line. I want a trauma specialist here before we wrap today. And contact our legal team. I need to know what options Sarah has regarding her identity and any possible risks. This is where everything changed. Dr. Phil knelt in front of Sarah again. Here's what we'll do. When we resume recording, we're going to tell a different story. Not one about a troubled teenager, but about a mother who has carried an impossible burden alone, and a daughter who deserves the truth. But if we share the truth, Sarah said nervously, won't that put us at risk? Not if we handle it correctly, Dr. Phil replied firmly. We won't use your former name. We won't mention locations. We keep the focus on healing, not hiding. And while we're filming, our team backstage will work on legal, therapeutic, and security support to address the real source of your fear. He turned to Emma. And you can decide whether you want to share this on camera or handle it privately. Emma looked at her mother, then at Dr. Phil. I want to do it. Because if we don't, We'll keep living the same way, and I'm tired of living like that. The cameras turned back on 20 minutes later. But what aired was entirely different from what had been planned. Dr. Phil stood center stage, speaking directly to the audience. What you're about to watch is not the episode we intended to film today. 30 minutes ago, a mother found the courage to reveal her real story. And that truth changed everything. Sarah sat in her chair with Emma beside her, their hands now joined. Sarah came here today carrying 17 years of fear, Dr. Phil said. Fear that if anyone learned her real history, the life she built would collapse. But fear comes at a price, and her daughter has been paying it. The audience, now aware of what occurred during the pause, listened closely. Dr. Phil turned to Sarah. You ran to protect your daughter. But at some point, the running became its own danger. Tell me what you need right now. I need to know we're safe, Sarah said, her voice more controlled. I need to know that telling the truth won't destroy us. Then let's make that happen, Dr. Phil said. Starting today, over the next hour, something meaningful unfolded on that stage. Dr. Phil brought out Dr. Charles Sophie, his longtime colleague and a respected family psychiatrist. Together, they began working with Sarah and Emma, slowly unpacking 17 years of trauma, fear, and secrecy. Then came an unexpected development. Dr. Phil's legal team had been researching Sarah's case backstage. An attorney stepped forward to explain that Sarah's ex, Emma's biological father, had actually passed away in a car accident 12 years earlier. Sarah broke down in tears, not from grief, but from relief. For 12 years, she had been running from someone who was no longer alive. You've been free for more than a decade, Dr. Phil told her softly. You just didn't know it. Emma held her mother tightly, and for the first time since the taping started, they appeared as they truly were, a mother and daughter who deeply loved each other but had been confined by a fear neither could escape. The audience erupted in applause, but not for show. This reaction was genuine, quietly emotional, deeply human. Dr. Phil sat back down, letting the moment breathe. Sarah, Emma, here's what happens from here, he said. We're going to arrange ongoing therapy for both of you, together and individually. We'll ensure Emma receives proper support at school, and we'll help you rebuild your identity, not through fear, but through truth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. This is the number of a service that assists women who've lived in hiding because of abuse. They help people rebuild their lives with stability and dignity. I want you to call them tomorrow. Sarah took the card with trembling fingers. Dr. Phil, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, he replied with a faint smile. Healing takes work, but it's worth every step. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The episode closed not with dramatic music or cliffhangers, but with something much simpler. Sarah and Emma walking off the stage together, hand in hand, moving toward a future that was uncertain but, at last, honest. As the credits rolled, Dr. Phil remained alone on the stage for a moment, something he rarely did. He looked directly into the camera. Sometimes, he said, the bravest thing a person can do is stop running. Sarah spent 17 years trying to protect her daughter. But today she stopped, and in that pause, she finally reached what she'd been chasing all along: freedom. 6 months later, Dr. Phil's team checked in on Sarah and Emma. They were thriving. Sarah had legally restored her birth name and identity. Emma was improving academically and had begun writing about her journey as a form of therapy. Together, they created a blog focused on healing from generational trauma. But the most telling update was a photograph they sent to the show, mother and daughter at Emma's 17th birthday, smiling naturally, no longer watching their surroundings with fear. On the mantel behind them sat Dr. Phil's business card, the same one he handed Sarah that day. Beneath it was a handwritten message. Thank you for teaching us that the truth doesn't break us. It frees us. Dr. Phil kept that photo in his office, not as a reminder of his work as a host or therapist, but because it symbolized something deeper. It captured the moment when two people chose courage over comfort, honesty over fear, and discovered that on the other side of pain was what they had wanted all along: peace. For Dr. Phil, the moment he stopped the tape wasn't about creating emotional television. It was about recognizing that sometimes the cameras must pause so real healing can begin. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is give someone space to finally say, I'm not who you think I am, and realize that their true self is exactly who they were meant to be.